I can tell you from all the footballs that I've handled over the last week, I can't tell the difference if there's a 1 pound difference or half a pound difference in any of the footballs.
We did not think we would need a physicist on this
show.
But
we do. After
thanks to Bill Belichick, we are adding a physicist because Bill Belichick says he is not a scientist, but sir, you are. So I want to start with you. Does his explanation make sense?
The explanation that I heard, I didn't catch all of the press conference today because I was driving during it. But it's basically the same as what I and several other physicists and chemists in the last several days. Like, the addition of that being pressurize the balls at warm temperature and measure them later at a cold temperature, you're going to get a drop in pressure. And the temperatures we're talking about, you can get 1 or 2 psi drop in pressure. The other thing I and many other people have been saying every bit as much is we need the exact details. What temperature, initial time, what temperature later, what was the initial pressure, were the games calibrated, lots of other things.
Well, I'm going to ask you to help me with the math here because you do this for a living. The report, the initial report that kicked this off, says that the Patriots fell 2 psi below the range, and the range is only 1 psi wide. It's 12.5 to 13.5. The report also stated, and there have been multiple reports since then, that the Colts did not fall below the range.
Right.
So even if the Colts started at the top of that at 13.5 and the Patriots started at the bottom at 12.5, and this is, of course, information we don't know for sure yet because the NFL hasn't told us. No matter what happens there with the atmosphere and the balls being tested inside the officials' locker room and then brought outside to the field where it was 51 degrees, not 30 or 20, but 51 degrees, how could only one team fall out of range if the range is only 1 psi?
Depends on the details. Is it so that the NFL said that the Colts did not fall outside, or those sort of hearsay reports?
Well, we've got multiple reports from multiple sources saying that they've got multiple confirmations within the NFL. And the fact that the NFL says that after testing both teams, they're only investigating the Patriots, that's sort of as much tacit confirmation as we would need of that. And that's sort of where the big question is now on this atmospheric explanation.
The fact of the matter is, one can probably come up with a reasonable explanation for it. For example, the Patriots started theirs inside in a warm room at 12.5. The Colts started theirs in a warm room at 13.5. They both go out and go to the same temperature outside. We have to presume that, right? That on the field it's the same temperature for both sets of balls. But if the Colts room in which they pressurized at 13.5 was not as warm as the Patriots room in which they pressurized at 12.5, then the Patriots dropped by 2 and the Colts dropped by 1, and the Patriots are outside the range and the Colts are inside the range.
Now, after going through this very elaborate explanation, essentially explaining these science experiments that they went through in the last couple of days, you heard him start to get pretty agitated, saying that this is something that was taking up a lot of his time in the last few days when he feels that he should have been preparing for the Super Bowl, that he feels that this team always plays by the letter of the law, goes by the rules, NFL rules, does not break the rules. And he was called out on that. When you ask about the mood of the room, one of the reporters went after him a couple of times saying, look, this is actually a team that's had a lot of controversy over the last few years. Specifically, the reporter called him out on the videotaping scandal from a few years back, where he was caught videotaping another coach's hand signals from the sidelines. Belichick got pretty defensive about that and stuck to his belief that this was, not only was this not cheating, that this was not the fault of anyone on his team, but that his team always abides by the rules. He basically, Poppy, chalked this up to atmospheric pressure, like when you get into your car after a cold night and your tire pressure's a little lower until you start driving again. He said that's, in his opinion, might be what happened, that these balls deflate without anyone touching them, without anyone messing with them. The pressure inside these footballs can vary based on the weather. He also emphasized that it's not team equipment managers or anyone on the team who inflates the footballs, that it's actually officials who do that work in a locker room. And he said, I'm sorry, not in the locker room. It's not done by the team. It's officials who do that. And he said that they're, they can suggest what PSI they'd like their footballs to be at before the game, but then they're at the mercy of the officials to inflate their footballs and take them out onto the field. Poppy?
All right, Sarah Gannon reporting for us live there from where the press conference happened just a little while ago. At the half hour, we're going to delve much more into this with our CNN sports anchor, Rachel Nichols.